So, Camilla Deliberus, you state here in your letter of application for a position of reference librarian that you always wanted to be a librarian and work in a public library. This was said to me by the director of the New Pastures Public Library, Catherine Van Veld, in a low, shaky voice. A woman in her late 60s, she seems to me, prim-looking, dressed properly, white starched cotton shirt. I could barely see her face, since she was wearing a felt hat with a wide brim that hid most of it. It was late February of 2004. She kept looking down at my letter, holding the edges tightly. It seems that one ring on her right hand, large blue stone, no wedding band. Oh, yes, yes, I answered quickly in a firm voice, and it was certainly true. Ever since my days as a library page in my high school days in Bronxville. We were in her small office, a large window reaching almost to the ceiling. On the wood panel walls, the portraits of the Van Veld family, 2 men at least, all from past centuries. It was the Van Veld family of rich merchants that had donated the money in the early part of the 20th century to build the New Pastures Public Library in white marble in the style of a classic temple. Exactly in the year MCM, the Latin letters were carved on the facade. Oh yes, I always wanted to be a librarian in a public library, I said again, adding, even before I was a page in the Bronxville Public Library. I was stuttering a bit. I always felt at home in the library, a quiet place with books to read. I thought I had to explain more about myself because she kept looking at my letter and not saying anything. She was making me nervous, as were her unsmiling family members on the walls looking down at me, probably judging me from old values. It seems as if they knew I had been living with a man that was not my husband for the past 4 years in Brooklyn while attending Pratt Institute. There was no reason for me to be nervous. I too was dressed just properly, a dark suit, chosen for the purpose for the interview, and I had a satchel, being a vegetarian. Besides, I knew I already had the job, having been interviewed the day before by the assistant director, Susan Westerly, who had been so impressed with my being a student at Pratt Institute, where I had earned my degree in library science, graduating May of the past year. Impressed even more with the 3 required reference letters. This library sure needs someone like you, she has said. Yet Catherine Van Veld, with a pillar of the community name, and all money who had built the library, had the last say. So, nervousness increasing, I clasped my hands and knees together tighter, as I sat rigidly across the large, heavy, dark wood desk, and a wooden plaque with her name on it, all in Gothic type. Suddenly, I had a bright idea. I would quote somebody important, a poet, who had said something so truthful in a poem. There is no frigate like a book to take you True, true, she half whispered, not letting me finish Emily Dickinson. And she was now reading the reference letters. She was taking so long, never raising her head to look at me. True enough, she repeated. I felt I was about to get a panic attack, so I began to take long, deep breaths. I needed this job to set me free, to give me a feeling of personal freedom, accomplishment on my own. For all of my 29 years, I had always been under the protection of my doting parents of retirement age, but both still working, Mama as a per diem daycare teacher, Dee as a journalist working from home. Maybe because my older brother, a freelance journalist, was always roaming the world's war zones looking for stories, they wanted me to live with them in their cozy home in New Pastures. And lately, under the protection of my boyfriend Chris and his large extended family in Brooklyn, owners of the famous Italian restaurant Capriello. Everyone had been nice to me, even hiring me as a waitress and cappuccino maker. I felt crowded upon by them, though appreciating both New Pastures and Brooklyn, crowded upon even by Chris, who had given me an engagement ring. But just to try it once in my lifetime, to come back from work to a place that you liked and you pay the rent. I had found one in New Pastures, a studio in the historic district, signed a lease. Oh, I needed this job, a real job finally. Pay not all the good, but many vacation and health coverage. It meant coming home to myself, to yourself, not having to explain in detail what my day had been like, except to my cats, of course. I don't know, maybe I had to prove something to myself, that I could take care of myself, that I wasn't afraid to be by myself, that I... Why do you want to work in a public library? If you love books, you could work in a bookstore, Catherine Belleville asked, eyes on another one of my reference letters, but with a firmer voice. Good question. I had never thought about it, and it had never come up in my classes at Pratt. The question
Mama.
jumped around in my head.